welcome to the simulation lab in the Capstone College of Nursing. The presentation I'm going to give today, the Learning in Action ELO that I did actually took place in our sim lab. So what more perfect environment to talk about what I did than in our simulation lab. This is our mannequin eye stand. We have 6 of these in the Capstone College of Nursing. He's just here for moral support. But this is our patient that as I talk about the scenarios, this is who our students were working with throughout the ELO. And this occurred in the Human Pathophysiology course, which is in our nursing curriculum. We have 5 upper division semesters. This is the first of those 5. So an introductory course all about disease processes, and it's taught concurrently with a concepts course and an assessment course. And one of the things that was very important for us in developing this ELO was making sure it tied in the other 2 courses. We didn't want them to continue to think of these things in a siloed manner, but really it all comes together to care for a patient, so we wanted them to be thinking about how that all came together with our patients here in the sim lab. For the ELO, we had 4 high fidelity simulations. High fidelity meaning a environment, a mannequin that really mimics real life. So wanting to really put those students in as close to a real setting as possible, but a very safe and controlled environment where they could make mistakes and they're not going to hurt. They cannot hurt him. And so we want them to be able to explore their understanding, to make mistakes, to learn about how to provide patient care with, well, we think it's less stress. They still get stressed out, but in a less stressful environment. And so we also, the courses that we teach, this Human Pathophysiology course is a first semester course. There's no clinical. So the students are not going into the hospital in this semester, but we want to bring the hospital to them to help them prepare. So when they're in the hospital, what is that going to feel like? They have all these questions. What does it mean? What does it feel like? What am I going to have to do? We give them a little taste of it, and it gets them very excited for future semesters. So again, we began this by really looking across the 3 courses. So 305 is my course, Human Pathophysiology. 308 is their concepts, which is more of a soft skills course. And actually one of my colleagues is in the next cohort of Learning in Action, and she's doing more with this idea in 308 as well. And then 310 is their health assessment. So we looked across these to say, how can we bring all this information together in a meaningful way for our students? And that was the basis for the scenarios we developed. And we wanted to make sure, as I said, that we prepared students for clinical practice. And so these are actually students on the day of their simulation. They don't have their scrubs yet. We figured they spent enough money first semester. They don't have their scrubs, but we do make them come in professional dress. And that has been an interesting learning experience, because how we define professional dress and how some of our students define professional dress is quite different. But during this scenario, we want them to actually do their assessment, to show us those techniques they're going to use for a patient. Think about how that links with the disease and explain to us what's happening in the patient, inside, that you're seeing on the outside. We tie in to some of our scenarios of a mental assessment, something about psychological conditions or mental health conditions, and a spiritual. And one of our scenarios is end-of-life focused. So how do you talk to a patient about spiritual beliefs? And also throughout all of the scenarios, they have to educate. A huge piece of nursing education nursing practice, is educating the patient. So we want them to be constantly practicing that skill in these scenarios. So one of the major outcomes, again, is we want to know, how did this help problem-solving skills? And one of the things that we did, and I know this is a very busy slide, but as part of our standard operating procedures here in the simulation lab, students complete a survey. After every scenario, they answer a set of questions. And so we use that as an opportunity to kind of assess how these simulations were helping the students, because we're assuming they're helping, and I think the evidence says that they are. So one of the questions says, I feel better prepared to care for real patients, and almost all of the students had an agree or strongly agree. Most, as you'll see, were in the strongly agree category. So they felt these scenarios better prepared them, which was one of our outcomes. We wanted them to have that experience and feel like they knew what they were doing. They felt that they gained a better understanding of the pathophysiology, which is my course. So not only did they feel like they understood what to do, but they understood the diseases that were occurring. They felt more confident in decision-making skills, able to predict what changes may occur, and also their assessments improved. And the way that this simulation worked is we had 4 case studies. So as students learned content in Patho, they were completing a case study. That case study built from one week to the next. So now we're going to add more information about our patient. And then right around the time of the exam, they came into the simulation lab and they took care of that case study patient in the flesh here. But we also know that they're very novice to simulation. They've never done this before. So rather than being kind of the faculty behind the one-way mirror, kind of the Wizard of Oz thing, talking from behind a screen, we were right here. So as a faculty, I was standing here with our patient. The students would be surrounding the bed. We'd have different groups, and they were a little bit bigger groups, but we'd talk about, okay, this is our patient. The first one was a patient with heart failure and COPD, which is a respiratory disease. So, okay, how are you going to take care of our patient today? First, introduce yourselves, and so they do have to introduce themselves. How are you going to assess this patient? And a student might say, I'd listen to heart sounds. Great, I want you to come up here and listen to his heart sounds. So that student brings the stethoscope. They should pull down the gown and listen. I will keep him covered for today's decency. But they should show us that technique. And they talk amongst each other. Well, I would expect to hear this sound. Are you hearing it? Why don't you confirm? Are you hearing the same thing as your peer? We let all of them listen. But so we want them to bring it together. Well, you say in this disease you expect this assessment. Go show me how you would assess it. Are you finding that? How are you going to talk to this patient? So very much kind of a Socratic method type of interaction, making sure all students participated. But again, I think the results show that it had the outcomes we hoped from the students' input. When we first did it, we didn't have and this was able to be done over a few semesters. The first time around, we didn't really have a grading expectation. And we realized that wasn't good. We needed to build in that. So we had a preparation piece where they had to bring those case studies handwritten, which they hate, but they've got to handwrite because I want to know they did the work. They had to bring it and they had to arrive on time. And if they didn't do either of those, they had to fail for the day. Nobody failed. We're so scared about not doing that correctly that they came on time and they came prepared. We have a piece about professionalism, which really pulls in that concepts course. So proper dress, being professional with your peers, respecting differing opinions. So making sure that they're working in a team in a way we would expect them in the healthcare setting. And then participating, including a reflection. They had to do a reflection activity at the end. And for the most part, we didn't have any issues. Students were getting hundreds, with the exception, a few students didn't necessarily have every question answered. So we did take off a few points. They had the work with them, but it wasn't as complete, so we took that off of their participation. The other big kicker was the professional dress. We had students come in with these big old slit open backs, or I could see their bra through their shirt, and so that was an opportunity for learning for them that you can't represent yourself that way. And it was important because when they go to the hospitals, they can go the day before, get to know their patient. We need them to dress in that way. And so it's a nice way to get some feedback to them about that. And then, so connection. So I am so not a big believer in big quotes on a slide, but I couldn't help myself. So in some of those reflections, we asked students what they thought about this activity, what they learned, what happened, how it's going to apply to their careers. And so we got some simple questions. So Dr. Lippe involved every team member by asking questions. Great. I had to think on my feet. Great. That's what we wanted. Some felt it gave them confidence. They felt that they now feel confident in their knowledge. I think they need that. It's kind of this ambiguous, I don't know what's going to happen in clinical, but now that they've had these experiences, it starts to come together a little bit. We had, I mentioned a scenario which is end-of-life focus, and that is my research focus. That was my passion of all of the scenarios. And a lot of the students felt that that scenario, I think of all of the ones we did, that one had the biggest impact, because that end of life tends to be the scariest topic for students. This patient is dying, and the students felt uncomfortable, but going through it, they had lots of positive feedback. One of this comment, the student really had a shift in perspective, that we always talk about people getting better, but I was taught end of life, they're not getting better, and it's important to do the best care we can while this patient dies. And that's my goal in teaching, that they see that. And one comment that I didn't expect, but we talk about in that your spiritual beliefs don't have to match the patient's. And that just to me is kind of just something I say. But one student said it is an agnostic, and having somebody say it's okay to have that belief system and still be able to be a good nurse meant a lot to that student. And so did I expect these types of comments? No. Did I love it? Yes. But to me, these types of reflections showed that not only did it help their knowledge, their confidence, their ability to know what they're doing in the hospital, but there was also kind of this deeper personal experience for the students through these scenarios, sort of forming their own identity as a nurse, which really was, I thought, incredible from this. Some remaining challenges. One of the big questions we have, and this is not just me, I do have a team of faculty that work with me on these. I can't make it all happen myself. One of the things is team dynamics. We've noticed as we've done this over several semesters, we see some teams that have multiple leaders and some teams that have no leader emerging. And we're trying to navigate that dynamic. We assign them to teams at the beginning of semester. That's their team. But now we're curious about what's the implication of that. When we see some of these groups that are weaker, that everyone's kind of struggling to pass the classes, how is that helping them? We might need to support them more. We have had some students that were unsuccessful in one of the courses, and we don't change our scenarios. We want them to be consistent. So we make them come back again. Are they getting anything out of it the second time? We're not sure. And so we're curious about what we do with these students who've been through the experience before. A big question is if they're sick. I'm not going to bring them in one-on-one another time, just logistically, as busy as the lab is, that can't work. So how do we provide the same sort of meaningful experience and learning for students? It takes a lot of manpower, it takes a lot of faculty, a lot of resources and time, and so how do we sustain this as we go, getting all the faculty to help out? When we first did this was something interesting. We tried to have the simulations before the exam as a way for students to assess their understanding of the content, kind of know where maybe some of their weaker areas were, so they could refine their studying. And then with scheduling and logistics, we had to move them to after the exam. And we're trying to sort out, for some students, that actually seemed to be better. The sim, for some students, actually got them more confused. They thought they had it figured out, and then the sim started making them question their understanding. But others, they don't have that feedback. And so we haven't quite sorted out what's the perfect timing, and what's the dosage effect. How many of these is beneficial? Is 4, that's what we feel is good. We have 4 exams, so we try to do 4 sims. But can they get the same impact with fewer sims because of the manpower sheet? So those are the things we're still trying to figure out. A lot of it's logistics. A lot of it is outside of our control too. It depends on what administration allows for manpower. It depends on sim lab availability. So we kind of work with what we have and see how that transpires. And so that's our scenario. I will say one of the things that we purchased with the ELO money was these plushies. It's all these different organ plushies that we bring to class, and when we're talking about diseases, I literally might throw a colon across the room and say, how does this disease affect the colon? And one student was having a very stressful day and asked if she could just hold some plushies. And that was very therapeutic for her. So other learning outcomes that we didn't expect, but the power of the plushie is a big thing in the nursing school. Thank you.